Okay, you should be good to go, Paul.
Okay, thank you, Alex, and thank you for managing the dashboard as usual in a very professional way. Welcome everybody to this virtual State of the Rockies address. It is, of course, unique. We're coming off a unique baseball year in a completely changed, not just baseball universe, but a completely changed world. And I just wanted to welcome our guest for today, Mr. Zack Rosenthal of the Colorado Rockies, the Assistant General Manager. So hello, Zack. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for the invite. Glad to be here.
We do this monthly. We've always done something monthly. It became virtual earlier this year, but we soldier on, and we've had some very interesting guests over the course of the months. And but we are looking for this. This is more of a special occasion because ordinarily we have had the State of the Rockies address in the springtime, usually in April or May. Obviously, we are now into Thanksgiving week, and we went through a 60-game regular season schedule, but I just wanted to welcome everybody and set the stage for Zack's address of State of the Rockies by asking if he would begin his analysis with a global perspective on how the unique 2020 baseball season has affected the economy, the economics of baseball, and then of course get down to more specifics. I think at the end of towards the end of the session, we will be able to have some Q&A if time allows and Zack allows. So with that, I'll turn it over to the Assistant General Manager of the Colorado Rockies, Zack Rosenthal. Sir.
Thank you. Yeah, I think actually that's my preference anyway, is to answer questions and talk to you guys about whatever it is that's of interest. Generally speaking, though, just talking to 2020, it was obviously, I mean, for every industry, just very strange, right? Very different, a lot of challenges, particularly for me and my job and for a lot of the people that are involved in the day-to-day. We had a lot to do in terms of like just planning out different types of scenarios. I mean, like everybody else, right? So much was up in the air for so long. We didn't know how many games we were going to play. We didn't know, in some instances, what the rules were going to be when we started playing them. We didn't know how we were going to prepare the players. I'll tell you guys a quick story that when we, I think back to March, and we had gotten word from the league that we were going to send everybody home, at least for a couple of weeks, and shut down spring training. And shortly before that, we had been told that we just needed to kind of restructure spring training and do a bunch of distancing requirements and all those types of things. And so it was really funny because we had I think it was a Saturday morning, we had like a 3-hour meeting with our major league staff and a bunch of people from the front office, and we had figured out exactly how we were going to try and space things out and utilize Salt River Fields. And then I had to jump out of that meeting to hop on a conference call with the league. And immediately the first thing they tell us is, hey, we're shutting everything down and everybody needs to go home. So I had to like run back down the hall, grab everybody else and say, okay, everything we just did for the last 3 hours, forget it, because we're going in a different direction. And, even then we weren't, like everybody else, we weren't sure how it was going to go. Initially, we were telling players, look, they're telling us a couple weeks. We really have no idea if that's realistic. But, we were starting to get concerned about travel and those types of things. So obviously, the way everything played out was a little bit more than a couple of weeks. And it created a lot of challenges in terms of development of players and, really health issues, just being with the guys, which we are typically able to do all the time. But at the same time, we were able to, I think, try a lot of different things. I know I learned a ton about our business and just, it really forced us, and I'm sure this is true for everybody in your day-to-day life and in whatever business you're in, but it forced us to figure out what was essential. It forced us to sit down and really think through, what do we absolutely need to do in order to make this work or that work, and what are some of the things that, depending upon the circumstances, we'll have to figure out how to live without, or live differently is maybe a better way to say it. It was a lot of work, but we had so many great people helping with all of the medical issues that we had to go through, to keep everybody cleared, all of the, just in general, the facility issues, and making sure that we had everything spaced out, and lockers, and just things that you would never even think about, that we've never had to worry about. And so in that way, it was very interesting. I think the baseball part of it was different also. Some players really, I think there was some hesitancy in terms of comfort level with everything that was going on. I mean, we saw some guys opt out, obviously, but I even think among the guys that played, nobody really knew what the situation was and how this was all going to go. And so flexibility is key in those types of situations. But I think, as you guys all know, baseball players tend to be people that do things the same way, right? They are creatures of habit. Routine is very important. And we were way out of routine the whole year. And that was true for everybody. So we got to learn a lot. We got to try some different things, as I said. And I think, we came out of the gate playing pretty well, had some injuries that popped up, and then, things took a turn for the worse. And obviously, the winning was few and far between down the stretch. There were some good things that we saw from some of our younger players who had opportunities to step up. And, there were some good things from our veteran guys as well. And, I think it put us in a position at least to, go out and try to make some additions to the club and see if a guy like Michael Givens and Kevin Pillar could help us creep back into things. And, we were, granted it was a 60-game season, but we still felt like we had a shot if we could get into the tournament and see how it goes at that point. So, obviously not thrilled with the end result in terms of the record. And, there were some things we definitely have to get better at as a group. I think the one thing that, at least me personally, I'm trying to at least remind myself every once in a while not to put too much emphasis on purely evaluating 2020 in any way, shape, or form. Just because it was just so different and it was short. And look, there's a reason we play 162. And that's to make sure that we have the right sample size to let things kind of get where they need to get in terms of your talent and opportunity. And that's not to say that it wasn't disappointing how it finished, because it was. But there were some good things, and I think we still have a lot of the pieces in place that helped us reach the postseason in 17 and 18. And I'm excited to see some of these younger players continue to take big steps, as we saw in 2020. Guys like Senzatella, who was outstanding pretty much from the jump, which was really fun to watch. I mean, the Daniel Bard story was something special, and really unique. I'm waiting for Disney to call us for the rights to that story. I'm sure that they will do like the rookie part 2 or something. Guys like Yancy Almonte and I mean, really Tyler Kinley, we saw some development with Ramel Tapia, and we saw some good things from guys like Josh Fuentes, and even some guys that kind of showed up out of nowhere that we weren't really even expecting to see play as often as they did. So, like I said, wasn't great, obviously, in terms of the overall record, but some good things, some development things. I think we were able to learn quite a bit about our guys and about what makes our guys tick a little bit. And heading into next year, I think that there is a belief in, again, the talent level that we have assembled within this group. And obviously, Paul, you mentioned the economics of it. There's the one thing you guys are going to hear me say a ton today is I don't know. And I think that I jokingly have told people that I think I've said I don't know more in the last 11 months than I have in my entire life combined. There's just still so much up in the air, and not just for baseball. I mean, for the world, right? I mean, this is not a baseball issue. This is a global issue, and baseball is being impacted by it, like a lot of industries are. But, we'll make the best of it, and we'll continue to take steps forward and try to continue to develop our players and do what we can, given, the safety and the health of our personnel, which is first and foremost, throughout this whole process. And that's not something we're going to flinch on. And I think we'll always be kind of where we have to go, as we work through any of these, really any of the issues that can pop up here. And, it's funny because I've had people ask me, like, what do you expect the next 4 months to be like? Or what do you think we're going to be looking at come March? And I don't know. I mean, who would have told us back in January that this is what we were going to be looking at in November, right? I mean, it's been crazy. And it's been something that, none of us have ever experienced before. And so it's really hard to predict how that's going to go and how that might impact, the 30 clubs and their owners, and their fan bases, and really everybody in between. So I don't know. But I think that one of the cool things about these jobs is that you get to have unique challenges like this. No off season is ever the same. Now, I hope we will never have one like this again, but typically, they're different every year anyway. And it's our job to adjust and to do the best we can to continue to put winning players on the field, and build up depth in our organization and just continue to get better. So that's kind of my intro spiel as it relates to 2020. And again, I can just, I can talk about whatever it is that's interesting to you guys. I don't know if there are particular topics that have come up that you want to address, or specific questions about players, but I mean, whatever you want to do, Paul, I'm game.
Okay, one question I would like to get out there, and then I'll let Alex kind of control the questions after that. But there was some discussion among our SABR group too about the Rockies' decision not to have a unique among the 30 major league clubs, not to have a postseason, as an after the season debriefing with the local media. And a lot of people wondered why that was. Can you shed some light on that?
I really can't, to be honest. I mean, that wouldn't have been me in that, postseason meeting. I don't know. I mean, that's more of a PR Jeff question, to be honest with you. I know, look, I think a big part of it is there's a lot that's just unknown right now.
Yeah.
And, so it's a tough spot to be in, to not be able to answer a lot of questions with any specificity. But again, I mean, my focus is usually not on those types of things anyway. I mean, I would be there watching, but I wouldn't be heavily involved. So, and I'm certainly not in the meetings as they're deciding those types of things. So,
it seemed like it was Dick, Buddy, and Jeff in previous years, or certainly last year.
Yeah, last year, right? They did one. I think it was last year we did one at the ballpark.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'm not sure. I wasn't involved in any of those meetings with those guys to make that determination. And but again, I think one of the things that we've been trying to just wait and see how things are going to go in a lot of circumstances, right? I mean, we didn't know what was going to happen to the GM meetings and the winter meetings, and there are just so many things that it seems like every week somebody is saying, well, next week we'll know a little bit more, and that'll help us make this decision. And then, so I can't answer that more specifically than that, Paul, just because I haven't been involved in those conversations.
One other thing I would throw out there, if you could go position by position and depth chart all positions around, and as I know, based on where we are right now, without knowing too much, without knowing where we're going, as you said, there's so much unknown here. But where do we stand, like at first base? Is Josh Fuentes the guy, or what's what does a November 23rd depth chart look like for 2021 right now?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's I think a tough question to answer specifically, but that's a good thing. I think part of what we have with this group of players is a lot of flexibility, guys that can move all over the place. Josh absolutely played great down the stretch last year. He did a really, really nice job for us, and there's places he needs to get better, for sure, but he did a great job with the opportunities that he had. But he can move around the diamond a little bit. McMahon can move around the diamond a little bit. Garrett Hampson can move around the diamond. Obviously, Rogers can move around the diamond. You still have, in my opinion, the best third baseman and the best shortstop in the game. And beyond that, out in the outfield, you've got a group of guys that can play really all three spots as well. And with Desmond coming back and the development that we saw from Tapia, obviously Charlie and Sam Hilliard showed us some stuff again. And then, with David Dahl, being David Dahl, there's opportunities here to kind of be flexible depending upon what kind of moves are available for us to make. Kind of the same thing behind the plate too. I mean, I think we saw some really good things from Tony and from Elias Diaz down the stretch, and Dom Nunez being on the roster. There's some depth there too. So it's hard to say. I mean, as we enter, if we were to start playing tomorrow, I think first base is the spot that we don't have like last year's opening day starter just sitting there, right? Most of the guys are coming back, but there's flexibility here to match up a little bit, to protect against health in different scenarios. I think a big part of this is whether we'll have a DH next year or not. And I'm not sure. I don't know, what that situation is. I think what excites me though, the most, and this is kind of the point that I've tried to make to everybody, is that I think that anytime, and this is going to sound like the most obvious statement ever, right? But anytime we pitch, we've won, right? Anytime we've won, we pitched is probably a better way to say it. I think it's exciting to see a John Gray, Marquez, Freeland, Senzatella kind of at the top end of your rotation and feel like, you have four quality guys there who have shown the ability to be really good at the major league level. Consistency and health obviously have been issues for those guys. But, to have four guys that have shown that type of potential is exciting. Losing Peter Lambert for the year was a bummer. And, I don't know exactly when he'll be back. Tommy John's hard to predict that way, but, when we get him back, that'll be nice. Castellani did a good job for us when he got his opportunities. And then we have some younger guys too that are coming, and, you combine that with a bullpen that, at least as we sit here today, we should, we're expecting to have Scott Oberg back to go with Daniel Bard and Michael Gibbons, and then a bunch of other young power arms, right? Guys that in stretches have done a really good job at the major league level as well. Consistency is going to be key for all of these guys. But there's at least there's a group of players here that are fun to watch and play the game the right way and care an awful lot about the Rockies and about winning. And I think afford us some flexibility based on different things that may come up here over the winter. And, one of the complicated pieces of this winter is going to be just, how all of this COVID stuff is impacting the marketplace, trades, but also free agency and everything in between. And there's going to be a lot of decisions made by clubs that may not be typical for what we've seen in the past. And I honestly think it's going to be really tricky to predict like when things are going to get rolling in this winter. And, there will be something's going to happen where a domino falls and maybe some other dominoes fall behind it. But I don't know that it's going to be the typical, everybody's just kind of waiting for one particular thing to happen and then everything follows right behind it. So I know I just got off on a tangent there, Paul, a little bit, but hopefully that gives you a little idea of kind of where we're looking.
Mm-hmm. One question I really want to ask is about Nolan Arenado and his status. Of course, much has been made about his situation, his relationship to the ball club. And how, in your opinion, has the pandemic and therefore the economics of baseball impacted the Nolan Arenado situation?
I don't know, because
you don't say I don't know a lot, so thank you.
Yeah, I did. No, but I mean, that's a pretty specific question about somebody else's like state of mind, right? And that's hard for me to say. I think some of what was out there was probably not 100% accurate in the first place. But also, I think it's important just to remember that we're talking about human beings here who work through. I mean, everybody has human beings that they work with, that they talk to and have to work through issues with and whatever else. And not everybody's 100% happy all the time with everything. But where he stands mentally right now, I don't know. I mean, I can tell you, you can watch him play and it's not like I or anybody else, I think, ever had the feeling that he wasn't engaged and he wasn't all in to trying to help us be the best team we could be. He had a rough year. There's no question about that. And he would be the first one to tell you that, I think. But, we've seen him have rough stretches, right? That's baseball. But we've also seen him have 162 games to get red hot and turn everything around and become Nolan Arenado again. And, there was certainly nothing lacking on the defensive side from him. He's the best over there, has been the best, I think, since the day he got onto a big league field. So I don't know. I still like watching him play. I'm glad he's on our team. That's the beauty of this whole thing. I mean, look, there's a lot of history here, a lot of relationships. And, when you have a player of his caliber, like, it's great when they're on your club. And look, we'll work through it all and we'll figure it out. We'll do what's best for the club and what's best for Nolan. And, I think that's what's most important here is just being able to communicate and figure it out.
If I may go to the other end of the, and we're shortly going to, open it up for Q&A from the general membership. I do want to say hello. He left for a second, but we are on the East Coast now too. Hello to Mark Cantor, who's out there in Philadelphia, who's joining us right now. I see him every year at the SABR National Convention. So hi, Mark, how are you?
Fine.
But to go to the other end of the food chain from Nolan Arenado, I notice, and I get up in the morning, make the coffee and open up the paper and look for baseball news. And I noticed that Riley Pint, the pitcher, was not protected for the, and is now subject to the Rule 5 draft. So, and this may be a question for the other Zach, Mr. Wilson, but has his development been less than the Rockies would have hoped for or expected?
Well, given where he was taken in the draft, I would say yes, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
just again, for the record, he was taken where exactly?
Third, I believe, right?
Third.
Yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, I think that the important things here are that, these decisions, when we go to protect players this time of year, it's not always just about that individual player. There's a lot of circumstantial pieces of the puzzle too, in terms of, how many spots we have and what our roster flexibility looks like in terms of being able to get guys off of the roster later in the winter if an opportunity comes up for us to make a trade or to sign a free agent. Obviously player development is a piece of that, and getting to know these guys is a piece of that. And then there's also just the inherent like risk reward factor that has to be in play. And we deal with that with all of our players that we, end up not protecting. And this year in particular, we had a handful of them that, we talked about. And problem is we only have 40 spots on the roster. So, we had to do some finagling just to even make this work. And we sit at 40 right at this moment. Obviously we'd love to get more from Riley, and we've seen some good things over the last couple of years. The other thing to remember is he's young. I mean, some of these guys, just because they've been around a while and people hear their names, like, we forget that they're still very young kids, and they're growing and they're developing and they're learning themselves and they're learning how to be a professional. And And that's all part of the process, and everybody goes through it at a different pace. So the specifics to Riley probably would be a better question for Zack Wilson. He knows him much more intimately than I do. But, I think, there's kind of the big picture point here of how we evaluate players and how we evaluate our roster, kind of does, carry across no matter who the guy is and who we're talking about. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I'm jumping around here, but do the Rockies, I keep saying it's out of habit. I was there 25 years, but the Rockies know for sure at this point that Albuquerque will be the AAA affiliate, and on down the line, what is this condition, the situation of that whole minor league system at this point? Do you know?
Of course not, because I told you I'm going to say I don't know all the time. No, those are bigger conversations right now still between the league and minor league baseball, and a lot of other parties. So as far as us committing to anything at this point in time, we really can't. There's just some bigger picture industry stuff to work out.
Okay, Alex, are people?
Well, I think we've gotten one question via the chat and then a hand raise. I think we could probably allow both avenues to people if they want to raise their hand electronically to ask Zack a question. I will unmute you. There's an electronic hand raise function. It should be available to you. And also, if you just want to submit a question, you can submit it via the chat function. So let me first take care of the chat function question. This comes from Mr. Bill Abba to Zack. And I think this is already kind of along the line what Paul just asked, is with minor league organizations and players impacted overall even more than the major league clubs, what is the condition of the organization regarding player development? Will clubs lose players unable to stay with it, do you think, due to a year without minor league baseball play?
I'm not specifically sure where that question was going, but I think if the question is really just kind of about the general state of our player development and how things went this year, again, for more specifics, I would point to Zack Wilson, but I can tell you that, I went down to Instructional League 2 weeks ago, must have been 2 or 3 weeks ago. We were down there for 4 or 5 days, and got to watch a lot of our really young, exciting prospects, really bond together and become, a team and establish some relationships and do some things together that, it's unfortunately they weren't able to do this year. I mean, there is no denying the fact that losing a year of development is really tough. These guys, this is what they do, right? I mean, they love this game like we all love this game, and they didn't get to play this year, and that's hard. Especially for a lot of these guys, that this is all they know. And, so it was tricky, and we had to stay on top of that. We have a great strength and conditioning group. We have a great training group, and there were a ton of Zoom conversations with our mental skills guys, with our pitching guys, talking about just the mental side of the game and everything that we could do, from afar, from a distance. We were able to get some of our younger players to our alternate site and get them some exposure. The Instructional League situation, luckily we were able to get through it and play a bunch of games down there, which was great. And I think we were one of only 2 teams that didn't have any positive tests. That's one of the things that I thought was really cool this year too, for our young players, was to see, they got to see how important it is to think about each other. In a lot of ways. And they got to watch our major league club talk about that a lot. And we didn't have any issues along the way. And I think the reason for that is because our guys truly cared about taking care of each other and making sure that they were making smart decisions for the entire organization. There's no doubt that we as an industry are going to feel the effects, I think, of losing a year of development time. It'll be different for each guy. We're going to have to be real intelligent about, health and making sure that, that whole ramping guys up and then having them come right back down when camp got shut down, and then ramping up again in the summer and then shutting down a little bit and then going back to Instructional League. And it's just different. And their bodies are used to a very cyclical process. So It will be, I think, incumbent upon each one of them to communicate really well with us about what's going on in their lives, how they're feeling, what they're doing. And typically we're really good at that. It's one of the things that I think we are best at is the relationships that our staff has with our players and their ability to get honest feedback from them, and to not get surprised by things along the way. And I think that is going to be, extremely important here as we move forward.
Okay, looks like the first hand raiser is Terry Shirley. So I will ask her to unmute if she has a question. Oh, are you okay, Terry? Oh, okay. Sounds like she's okay. So next is from Greg Petty, and I will ask him to unmute.
Hey, Zach, thanks so much for coming. And I can imagine that more than most seasons, you don't know a lot of things here. I have about 10 questions, so I'm going to try to embed only 2 of them in this question and come back for my others.
All right, sounds good.
But there's got to be no question that you and other ball clubs are facing a different sort of salary constraints this year compared to last year. At least I would think so. I know you've got a lot of money coming off the books, but I also would think you wouldn't be looking at the same amount of total salary being spent this coming year as past years. And maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. Meanwhile, you've got the uncertainty about Nolan. You've got a guy in Trevor Story I'm sure you'd like to re-sign. Just from a fan standpoint, I can't hardly see how you could afford to sign them both, and which has to be a tough situation for you as a management team to be in. And then if you did sign them both, you wouldn't eventually have money for that young pitching staff. So I think as an organization, you kind of just have to decide where you're going to put your money. So I'd like you to talk us through about the financial, just the financial situation, and do it by industry too, if you want, but that you guys face, probably in not replacing all the money that's coming off the books, and how you're going to go about parsing out the Story Arenado versus the future pitching staff, which I know that money hasn't hit you yet, but it will.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that, a lot of this stuff isn't wholly in our control, right? It's not completely up to us whether we can extend players. It's not completely up to us how players handle player options and those types of things. So there is only so much, that we can do. But obviously, we know who our great players are. And I think everybody else does too. And we're fortunate to have this problem, right? I mean, this is, I remember when we were going through, really kind of a similar type of situation when we had, Tulo and Cargo, and, we had some young players come in as well at that point in time, and trying to figure out how we were going to plan out, the future. And you can even go back before that and look at, with Aaron Cook and Francis and Holiday and Atkins and Hop and all those guys, and trying to figure out how to, how to move some money around to make it all work. Like I said, part of this is that, players have rights in the collective bargaining agreement that allow them to, exercise some power over their own careers. And that's a good thing. That's how the rules are aligned. And, but you're right. I mean, that it makes it hard for us in some ways, because we see, a window here with some really good players who have won, right? And who have been kind of the core of the group of winning players on winning teams that have gone to the postseason. So we know that they are capable. We know that they can do it. We know that, they like playing in Denver, and that they like each other. Most of them came through the system together. How it's eventually going to play out with kind of those bigger name guys, I'm not exactly sure at this point. I mean, we have a lot of time here to figure some of that out. It's not like anything has to happen prior to opening day with any of this, but we're going to have plenty of conversations there to try and, make sure that we've exhausted all of the options with regard to those really good players and what they mean to this organization.
And financial constraints.
Yeah. So that I wish I could tell you that too. there's still a lot of questions about 2021, just like there were about 2020. And not baseball questions, but just COVID questions, right? And what the economy is going to look like. And are we going to be able to have fans in the stands? Are we going to be able to play 162? What is that going to look like? And it's a tough place to be in right now, to be honest with you. I mean, this is one of the things that I help Jeff manage is our payroll, future looks. And, you know, I oversee our arbitration process too. And that's going to be tricky. You know, it's a strange year for all of this stuff. And so there are so many factors at play, that a lot of which we don't control at all. And so we are making sure that, at least from our view, that we've thought through all the different permeations of it and trying to be smart about what one decision will mean to the next decision. And, you know, I think we're trying to take those one at a time also, because, you know, if you go into it with one, you know, lane and you say, this is what we're going to do, especially when you don't control that lane, it makes it really hard to then be ready to maneuver to the next lane. And so that's where we've been spending our time, is just making sure that we've thought through a lot of different options here, and trying to, I mean, you said it right. The way these guys are all connected and how they affect each other is absolutely huge. And, you know, a lot of that hopefully will get cleared up as we move forward and we get a better feel for what we think 2021 is going to look like. But if any of you know that and you've got some pull at Pfizer or something, let me know. Okay. That'd be helpful.
Thank you, Greg. Next up is Robert Gower.
Hello, Zach.
Hey.
I just had a question, not completely about the Rockies, but involving them. What would your potential 2021 Hall of Fame ballot look like?
Specifically, who are you curious about?
Just anybody. I mean, I guess, what are your thoughts on Todd Helton, or maybe more polarizing ones, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens?
Well, I mean, those are, so the Bonds Clemens one is a very personal issue for everybody, right? I will tell you all, and I think I've told you guys this in the past when I've spoken to this group, but I was born and raised a Giants fan. I love Barry Bonds because he was awesome when I was a kid. He's the best player I've ever seen. And, you know, I think there is at least an argument for he and Clemens because of the fact that they were the best in their, you know, in their time period when there was a lot of stuff going on that wasn't quite right. I think there's a pretty good argument for those two getting in. And if I had a vote, I probably would vote for those guys. I just think they're so much better than everybody else anyway. But that doesn't, I see the other side of it too, right? I mean, you know, cheating in baseball and records in baseball is a really big deal. And I think it's, you know, it's important to not ignore that. But I think for those two in particular, you know, I would have a tough time keeping them out of that room of like the best ever. And as far as Todd goes, man, I hope he gets in. I think he should. I mean, some of the stuff that he did, if you go back on Baseball Reference and like look at some of Todd's lines, I mean, they're ridiculous. And I know he was playing at Coors Field and it was pre-Humidor and whatever else, but like, I mean, there's some stuff going on in those stat lines that's just like video game numbers. And you know, I hope Larry Walker was kind of the start to people respecting Rockies players. There oftentimes it feels like there's this, you know, if you play for the Rockies, you can't actually also be a good hitter, right? It must be because of where you play. And that's not true. I mean, Todd Helton was going to hit no matter where he got drafted, no matter where he played. Larry Walker is the same. I mean, there were people that didn't think DJ LeMahieu was any good just because he happened to play for us, right? And then you see what happens when he goes. I mean, there are plenty of examples. Like, good baseball players are good baseball players, and I don't think it should be held against them that they happen to get drafted by the Rockies and play here in Denver. That's not anybody's fault. And you know, those guys, they dominated, and you know, I think it would be really, really cool for this organization to see Todd get in. I think he deserves it. I have no idea if he will. You know, there's obviously a lot of votes out there and a lot of voters out there, and how they look at our ballpark and that type of stuff, certainly seems to come into play. But I think that's where I would be, at least on those three guys.
Thank you, Robert. Next up is Mike Sullivan.
Hey, Zach, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks for doing this.
See you.
You guys don't want to see me right now. Anyway, thanks for doing this. I've heard quite a few star players say that there was a kind of an adverse effect for the MLB kind of restricting live game internet or access to videos in the dugout. Can you speak to if that was kind of an issue in the Rockies to make like in-game adjustments this year, since they weren't able to get the live game footage, or if that was just kind of an excuse some of these guys had because of their down seasons?
I guess I would answer it a couple of different ways. One is, again, going back to that creatures of habit comment, right? It's just what they're used to. This is how they've come up, and for most of them, how they've played their entire major league careers is being able to go up into the tunnel and watch video. But there were plenty of guys who had good years this year without that ability, right? So, it's doable to perform without having that available to them. But there were some really good things that came out of that too. I mean, having everybody in the dugout for the whole game was kind of cool. There wasn't that, guys running off to go see about that last pitch in their last at bat. Instead, they're sitting there and they're watching the live game and they're talking to their teammates about what's going on. But it's a change. It's certainly a change. And the technology has come so far with these guys that they're really good at analyzing video and analyzing data and really figuring out how to make that adjustment. It's a skill set. They're not all great at it, but some of them are really, really, really good at it. And that competitive advantage for that individual, it probably is on some sliding scale how much they missed it, right? Just based on their ability to analyze quickly, efficiently, effectively, and then make adjustments in game. At the end of the day, everybody was playing by the same rules. So it's hard to complain about it too much. I think given the bigger picture of everything that was going on in our game, with stuff that was happening in the clubhouses, at some other places, like I'm okay with it. I understand, why those decisions were made. And I think at the end of the day, if everybody's playing by the same rules, we can make it work. It's just a matter of adjusting to whatever those rules are. And the guys get used to it. I think if we had played a full season, under that scenario, by the time we get to September, they're not even thinking about it. That'd be my guess.
Thank you, Mike. Next up is Chris Cohen.
Hello. First of all, thank you for being here. So earlier you mentioned the idea of arbitration and how that's one of the things you help oversee. And I was wondering for you, how do you toe the line between telling a player they're not as good as they think they are, but at the same time not saying that so hard, so when it comes time for actual extensions, you don't feel hurt by a team and want to leave?
That is literally the $1 million question. So kind of my philosophy has always been, we're one of the few teams, we may be the only team that actually has somebody from the baseball department argue these cases when we go to hearings. And I do those. And the theory behind it, with most clubs believe, look, we don't want somebody from the baseball department because of those relationships, right? Like you were saying, Chris, like that, you don't want somebody having to hear from somebody that they know and somebody they need to go and sit next to in the clubhouse the next day where they struggle. I think we've looked at it a different way, which is just that I think our relationships with our players are good enough and long-term enough that they know who we are and what kind of people we are. And that at the end of the day, the Rockies never decide to go to arbitration with a player. It's a mutual decision between the player and the Rockies when we just can't agree on a salary. I think the other piece of it is it's business, and it's never about the player. We don't, when we go to a hearing, we don't focus on trying to bash our player. That's not productive. And also, why would, I mean, if we felt that way, we wouldn't have tendered that player. We wouldn't have them on our roster. You know, we have guys that we like, and that's why they're on the team. And so it really just comes down to, you know, it's a valuation question, right? It's no different. You know, if you don't agree with the value of the house you want to buy, and you guys are going to sit down and talk about the comps, and, you know, well, I like that bedroom better than this bedroom, and that one has 3 bathrooms, this one has 4. And I mean, the reality is, if you do it right and you do it respectfully, it is purely a business conversation, and it doesn't have to be, you know, 3 hours of telling a guy they're not good, because that just, first of all, I think that would be disingenuous anyway. You know, because they're on our team. So it's just a matter of trying to make it a little bit more scientific and say, look, this is where the market is, and this is what the market values, and this is how we look at it, and we understand how they're looking at it. And you know, typically, you know, we say this about, my wife and I talk about this a lot. You don't go to trial unless both sides have a story to tell, right? Otherwise, you settle. And that's the same thing with salary arbitration. I mean, it's never black and white. It's usually a coin flip, and it's usually because there are multiple ways of evaluating a player. And then it just comes down to us trying to educate an arbitration panel on why we value the player the way we do, and why we think the market values them that way, and try and do it in as respectful and you know, as professional a way as possible. And I think that's something that we've been pretty good at over the years. It's not fun. I mean, I'll tell you that right now. It's not fun. I like our players. We have good human beings on our team. It's not fun to do those hearings, but, you know, it's part of the agreement that they have in place in the CBA. And so, you know, at the end of the day, that's the job, you know, and I think every job has aspects of it that really aren't the most fun. The intellectual exercise of comparing player stats and markets, I really enjoy that part of it. I like the mental exercise of just talking about players and talking about baseball. And I mean, this is what we all did as kids, right? Like, we would take back of baseball cards and argue about which guy was better. You know, and so this is just a little bit more complicated, and there's real money on the line. And but for us, again, you know, it's never about that. It's just about, look, if we truly believe that we've done our homework, we believe in our process, we believe in you know, where we think this should work, or how we think this should work, then we should be willing to explain that to somebody and get an outside opinion on it.
I may follow up on Christopher's questions. Many feel that the arbitration system itself is flawed because the arbitrator does not have the ability to compromise. It's either the team's figure or the player's figure. Do you see in the foreseeable future any adjustment to that, what many consider a flawed arbitration system?
Probably not. So the NHL does it the other way. And I think we're actually the only league now that, in fact, like in the business world, like when you go to arbitration, you either go to baseball arbitration or just regular arbitration. And our system is set up to encourage settlements, period. End of story, right? When an arbitrator can pick anything in between, there oftentimes is not that incentive to go settle, because you're going to go in and tell your story, I'm going to tell mine, and we'll just let him figure out which one of us is more right than the other, or maybe they just split the difference. But that incentive, that, you know, that absolute black and white win or lose doesn't exist. That's the whole point of a system like this. It is to force us to go down every path to get a deal done before we walk into that room, because once we do, it is black and white. It is right or wrong. And it's even more complicated for us because they don't write opinions, the panel, right? We get a decision and that's it. They just say, hey, player's gonna make X. We sided with the club, or we sided with the player, and that's it. There's no written decision. There's no analysis. There's no real true like precedent, like established legal precedent doesn't exist in these decisions. So it's up to us to to know the markets inside and out, read all the cases, know all the slides, have a good feel for what works and what doesn't, what drives the market. And it's in everybody's best interest to settle. And I personally think as long as we're going to have arbitration, my guess is we will have it in this fashion to force those settlements. But you know what? I don't know. I mean, who knows, as you know, the new CBA discussions start to happen. I mean, who knows what each side's going to value and how they're going to go down those paths. But I do think it works in terms of forcing settlement. I mean, we don't go to that many hearings as an industry, you know, relative to the number of players that we have out there. So it does its job. And I think at the end of the day, that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to put some severe risk on either side of the ledger. And if you don't get a deal done, then you're going to have to face that risk.
Okay, thank you.
We did have a question in the chat room from a member. They would like to know about former Rocky Roberto Ramos, who played at AAA. He recently hit 38 homers in the Korean Baseball League this past year, second most in the league. Why didn't he seem to be a fit for the Rockies?
Well, I mean, there's a few, that's a pretty complicated answer. I mean, it goes back to some of the stuff we were talking about before with regard to what our roster looked like back when we had to make that decision. You know, it also goes back to, you know, our evaluation of the player, the player's evaluation of himself, really the whole industry's evaluation of the player. And he had an opportunity to go make some money and wanted to do that. And it made sense for us given where we were with our roster and what our needs were at that particular time. We never like players to leave that we like, you know, and we liked him. Great kid, you know, swings and misses too much, right? Like a lot of guys who hit a lot of home runs, but he also does hit a lot of home runs. You know, the defense wasn't great. We don't have a DH at this point in time, you know, when we're making that decision. There were just a lot of things where it just wasn't the right fit for us at that moment in time. And look, we're all rooting for him. I mean, we followed him, and not because we wanted to see if we made the right decision, but because he's a great kid. And, you know, those are the types of things that, look, sometimes it's the right thing to do to give these guys the opportunity to go have some success somewhere else, based on, you know, the setup of our 40-man roster and our payroll and our depth at that point in time and who we have coming and, you know, all of those things. And the other piece of it that, you know, we can't, you know, I can't get into in specifics here is like, we know what the industry value is of him. We know what kind of trade talk was out there. We know what our scouts are hearing from other scouts. So we have a pretty good feel. It's not like we're just on a whim, just, you know, sending him overseas to go play baseball without having a feel for how he could help our organization in other ways. There's a lot that goes into that decision. And, you know, I think that's one of the things we do pretty well, actually, is, you know, if you look at the players we've let walk away in those types of situations, we've done okay in terms of what they've turned out to be. They usually have turned out to be kind of what we thought they would be. And that doesn't mean that they're not good and they don't have any value, because that would be insincere. I mean, he can hit a lot of home runs, and I don't think there's any question that he's going to. He's going to strike out a lot too, but he's going to do all of it with a smile on his face, which is why we're all rooting for him.
And as promised, Mr. Greg Petty is back again with follow-up on his 10 questions. So
I was going to say, is this 3 through 10?
3 through 10, right?
Go ahead, Greg. Greg, are you there?
Greg, you got to unmute.
You got to unmute, Greg.
Yeah, I did, but then it got remuted. I'll just do questions 3 through 5 and let 6 through 10 go.
Okay.
One of it had to do with, and this is just my ignorance, have the Rockies had to let go people, significant numbers of people in the offseason? I know, for instance, the Cubs, who I follow closely, let go 100 people, and many of whom actually had baseball, you know, were responsible for scouting in Venezuela, also a key guy in the Caribbean, you know, so it wasn't just other operational guys. So one, did you guys have to do that? 2, This season comes at an awkward time, I would think, or in conjunction with the CBA. I don't know whether you have any insight into how you think those two things might interact. I mean, I know you don't know what the upcoming season is going to be like, but it might be a guess that it's not going to be quite as much revenue in the game this coming year. That you won't have 50,000 people in the first day, would be a guess I'd have. That baseball just wouldn't be allowing it. And then thirdly, do you expect to be active in the trade or free agent markets?
Man, those are like three totally not related topics. That was pretty impressive to get them all together. It's good. The first one, I will tell you that we have, and I'm proud to say this, we haven't let any full-time staff go this entire year, not a single one. We unfortunately had to let go of our part-time staff. Fortunately, we have a bunch of wonderful people at the Rockies, and we had full-time people picking up for part-time people roles too. We had baseball operations people working in the clubhouse. We had VPs working security around the ballpark. We had VPs working in the dugout stores and those types of things. I mean, it was really a testament to the kind of people that we have, and it allowed us to keep everybody employed. And I think every decision that is being made with those people in mind, first and foremost. Obviously, depending upon how everything goes, I mean, all this could change one way or the other too, right? And hopefully we get good news on the vaccines and we get back to business as usual. The second question was, I'm blanking. What was the second part?
Possible interrelation between the down revenue season and the CBA. And by the way, money was the connecting.
I know, I got you.
Connecting deal with all.
Money connects everything. I know. I'm as the lawyer in me is very interested in how this is going to go. I think, I said it about arbitration. I like the intellectual exercise of negotiation. I like the creativity that comes with, really complicated agreements like this. I think it's fascinating to get a feel for what's important to everybody and figure out a way to try and incorporate as much as you can to make everybody as happy as possible. And when you think about, all the different markets that exist and all the different players and their situations and how much money is actually involved here. I mean, it's amazing that anything ever gets done, to be really honest with you, right? It's really crazy when you think about every individual's individual interest, right? And yet we've been able to stay on the field. And I think that's a credit to everybody who's been involved. I hope that the same will happen this time around. The game's in a good place. I think that it's the baseball itself is good. I think the players are fun to watch. They're extremely talented, and they're making a lot of money. So my hope is that that everything goes smoothly. Whether there will be a tie-in with how COVID proceeds here over the next few months. I mean, I don't know how related those things will be unless there's kind of a long-term concern maybe about COVID beyond even 2021. If something changes kind of going in the other direction, then we're all hoping. Otherwise, I would hope that the focus is on kind of getting back to normal baseball and what rules do we want to play by when the CBA does expire. And in terms of how active we're going to be, I think one will dictate the other in a lot of ways. We are certainly having a lot of conversations right now. One of the complicated things, and I said this at the outset, is that you've got 30 different markets being impacted by this year differently. And so it's gonna be really interesting to see how trades line up from team to team, because there's gonna be teams that were drastically impacted by what happened in 2020 more so than others. There's gonna be teams that have even if they weren't impacted, might have some money to spend because the way their roster is structured and then who's coming off it or who did come off of it at the end of this past season. I think one of the interesting things about trades, and usually we see more of the free agent stuff happening early in the winter because it's simpler, right? You don't have to give up any players. You're just, let's talk about the value here and let's come to an agreement. One of the things that I think is kind of interesting this year, though, is that because there's all those unknowns about what everything could look like in the future, the trades are actually more in control of the clubs, right? We can talk about the terms and we can figure out how do we want to do this and how is the money going to work, or how is, what players need to go here and there. I mean, there's different ways to structure things, but all of that is, I mean, you said it yourself, the money ties all this together, and so you've got all these different interests that are going to be watching, what's happening in their market and when you think even beyond the market, like what do each of these ownership groups do outside of baseball? How did they make their money and where are their businesses and how are their businesses affected by what happened in 2020? And how does that impact their club? And it's going to be, I will tell you this, we have been extremely active in terms of conversations about all kinds of stuff. And it's been kind of fun in that way. I mean, a lot of teams are trying to figure everybody out right now. And what is everybody trying to do and what kind of resources do they have? And how are they going to go about getting to whatever that goal is? And where are they in their process, right? I don't know, it's going to be, I could see it being quiet across the entire game, and then I could see it going just bananas at some point. And I think a lot of it, I mean, I hate to say it again, but a lot of it just comes down to how the COVID stuff is looking and what people are anticipating 2021 is going to look like. Look, at the end of the day, we're going to play. So we're all going to have to build out our rosters. We're going to have to add as much depth as we can. We're going to have to try and build the best team we can. So things are going to happen. Just the when and the how, I think, is going to be still kind of hard to predict for a little while here.
I think that does it for questions.
Anybody else?
Oh, no, sorry. One follow-up question from Lynn Glickman.
That's actually Mark Cantor, but good.
Oh, okay. Mark, based upon the country's political situation, how do you deal with issues, say, in the clubhouse with players, layers of different political views expressing themselves, etc.?
Whoa.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
Well, I went to Berkeley. So the one thing I will tell you is that I'm in favor of everybody being able to be entitled to their own opinion and feel however they want to feel. We have a really diverse group in our clubhouse. I obviously I can't speak for other clubhouses, but I was really impressed with the conversations that were happening in our clubhouse this summer about all of this stuff. Just the openness and the questions that people would ask and the research that these guys were doing on their own. It takes a lot to become a big leaguer, and a big part of that is intellect and curiosity and problem solving and research, right? This is what these guys do. Now they don't typically have to do it in a classroom type setting, but they can, and they know, I think, what's important to them and what they believe in. I think it's tricky. Obviously I wasn't around the guys during the election and during all the wonderful debates that we had before the election. But I can say that, really throughout the spring and the summer, the conversations, I thought were really, really open-minded. I thought they were very, they were just good, debates, good questions being asked. And we have people from all over the world in those clubhouses that believe in all kinds of different things. And I never saw any issues. In fact, I saw the opposite. I thought it was really cool. I won't name the players, but I overheard a conversation one day with guys really challenging each other on their core beliefs of their political sides of the aisle and just what it is that pushes them that way and why. And you know, they were two individuals that come from extremely different backgrounds, and but the respect that they had for each other was far more than probably our current president and our soon-to-be president had for each other during their debates. But there was an open-mindedness too. It was general curiosity about why is it that this is important to you, and so what impact did this have on your family, and how do you look at this with your kids? And I mean, it's a good question, Mark, because I think it's really important to us that we continue to educate our players. You know, I don't shy away from those conversations with them. I don't shy away from giving them my opinions, as long as they're willing to respect them the same way everybody can respect, each other's opinions, no matter what it is that you're talking about. I just think that that's one of the things that can help a group kind of come together a little bit too, is understanding each other and feeling like they have a good sense of where people come from and how their past experiences have shaped them as people, as teammates, as leaders. And so, yeah, I mean, that's what I saw. It was encouraging. I thought it was cool. And, you know, we have, like I said, we have a really good group, thoughtful group, smart group. And I think we saw some of that over the course of the summer for sure.
Thanks.
I believe that is it for questions. Oh, okay. we got Chris Moyer. He slid one in.
Okay.
Chris Moyer. Do we have time, Zach, for one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Lately, it seems that analytics tend to have pitchers taken out of the game considerably earlier in games. What can be done in the industry to help develop starting pitchers so starters can go 7 innings instead of 4 or 5?
What can be done? Well, I mean, part of that question's always tricky because, I mean, what can be done is just how we train them and the quality of their stuff. I mean, look, the only reason pitchers get taken out when they get taken out is because the information that the manager has in front of him says that the next option is going to be better than the one that's on the mound right now. You know, you don't see guys coming out of games typically when they are dominating and they have a super low pitch count, right? There is, but there's also, you know, the one thing I like to say to people all the time is all of this is a game of blackjack, right? All of it. And, you know, you go to the Blake Snell decision to take him out of the game. And
here it is.
Yeah, well, and look, I don't know what they were looking at. But I can tell you that if the numbers are heavily in favor of making that move, now you can debate who he brought in, you can debate a lot of different things there. But if the numbers are telling you, look, this is the best decision to make, it's never going to be 100% to 0%, which means that at some point you are going to lose that coin flip, right? Even if it's, you know, 90-10, that means 10 times it's going to go badly for you. You hope it doesn't happen in the World Series, right? I mean, that's the idea. But I also think what I enjoyed about that decision was all the conversation that came after it and all the analysis that went into it and all the, I really enjoyed watching Kevin Cash and his team stand there and go, you know what, we believe in him and we believe in his decision-making. And there is, I think there's value to consistency in your process and consistency in your conviction, I guess, in your decision-making based on whatever that process is. And I think the reality is that they're not where they were that night without playing the way that they played all year. And I don't think that it's fair to, you know, to just challenge somebody to go away from their strength and their convictions in a given moment because it didn't work out either. And the other thing I'll say is, look, the reality is Kevin Cash had more information in front of him about that matchup and the matchups to come than any of us. And so, you know, it's without knowing exactly what that information looks like, I think it's really hard to criticize a particular decision. Obviously, we all want great starting pitching that can pitch deep into games. That is, if it existed everywhere, and guys could go 7 or 8 innings every night, that's what we would all have. The game has changed that way though. That's not typically how it goes. Hitters make adjustments. You know, we are able to see the stuff changing throughout a game from a pitcher. And we also have developed relievers who can dominate in short stints, and lots of them. And so, you know, I think the combination of all that, you know, plus the idea of just, look, I'd rather be a hitter too soon than a hitter too late, that a lot of managers have. I think that's why we see it. But it's also not, you know, it's not always the case either. I mean, when guys are rolling, you know, there are plenty of managers who let them go. And we see that with Marquez quite a bit. Senzatella got to go deep into games. We saw it with Kyle a couple of times. So I think I think the circumstances are very much in charge of that. But I also think it has a lot to do with the personnel that's available to teams right now. Power arms out of the bullpen are hard to hit. When guys are throwing 100 miles an hour, it is hard to hit. And if you can keep rolling those guys out there, you know, you have a chance to continue to get outs. So, you know, how we can develop them is we just need to get them better. I mean, the better pitchers pitch deeper into games. And so, I mean, I don't know how to do that. If we all knew how to do that, we would be having different types of discussions. But I think that's why it's changed over time too. There's more specialization. There's the development of specialization is key. The research is key. The ability to make adjustments plays a huge part in how all that goes. So, I mean, obviously, I'd love to have that 1990s Braves starting rotation and just let them go every night. But I think the reality is that, you know, that doesn't exist most places right now. So you kind of do, you know, what you can with what you got.
I think that might be it. Yep. No questions remain, Paul.
Okay. One, as a lifetime Giants fan, Zach,
No, not a lifetime, just an early growing up time. I haven't been a Giants fan since I put purple on. Okay. It's been a long time.
No, I get that. But when I encounter Dodger fans right now and they say, well, we finally ended our 32-year World Series championship drought, I said, I usually just say, yeah, but it was a practice year. So, you know, it doesn't really count. So anyway, next time you're a Dodger fan, he starts giving you grief, you might want to trot that baby out.
I can't say that I haven't already trotted that baby out. Listen, Dodger fans to me get no sympathy. None.
Well, I'd like to thank Zack Rosenthal for his time and his expertise in his State of the Rockies address this year. It's, of course, done virtually, but nonetheless, he's always been a friend of this SABR chapter and very forthcoming with his candid opinions on everything that we threw at him, except for Greg Petty's questions 6 through 10 we didn't get to. but other than that, thank you so much, Zach. And I would can we stay on, Alex?
I think we have it till 2, and Zach's welcome to stay on too if he wants to, but it's up to him.
So we're gonna throw this wide open to anybody who would like.
Do you want me to unmute it? Do you want me to unmute everybody?
Yeah, unmute everybody. Okay. But anyway, Zach, thank you so very much. And have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And say hello to your mom for me. I'm sure she doesn't remember me.
I will. Thanks for the invite. And hope you all have a good holiday as well. I'll stick around here till about 1:30. I got to jump on a call at 1:30. So I'll hang out for a few more minutes.
Great. So we have 2 chats here. What is it?
Got some. Michael Clare would like to just say thank you to Zach.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Zach.
So I've asked everyone to unmute if they wish to just talk amongst themselves.
How have we gone 1 hour and 17 minutes and we haven't heard from Thomas Harding? How is that possible?
Because he has my phone number.
Hey, I was enjoying this. Can you hear me now? Okay. I was just enjoying this Kind of cool. Hey, can I ask a question? Is it okay now?
Absolutely.
It's been okay.
You could ask Thomas, you could have asked a question earlier.
I know, but I wanted to, not ask questions, but I was looking at the NBA free agency frenzy there, and it didn't look like or having gone through a COVID year affected that one bit. They seem to do things as pretty much business as usual. Can you kind of explain maybe the differences in the sports? Was it that they had a little bit of a regular season, or was it that they have a salary? Why is it that they're able to have so much activity with really big dollars where baseball just doesn't know at this point?
I think it's those two things for sure. The fact that they played a full regular season, essentially, right? They were 8 games short, something like that. My understanding, and this could be wrong, so don't quote me on this, but my understanding is that the players did get their full salary paid out to them through the course of that regular season. They got all their paychecks.
I know the NHL did. I'm not sure on the NBA. It was close. It was
pretty close, right? Yeah, I'm not sure either. I thought so, but I'm not sure how that works.
Okay.
I think the other piece is definitely the salary cap piece, because you can plan ahead in terms of how many max contracts you want to give out, and you are limited in so many ways, and so it forces, I think, players to make decisions quickly, because if they don't, the money might go somewhere else, and when the money goes somewhere else, it's gone. It's not like they can continue just to add to their tally, despite what I'm reading about the Warriors, that's my team, by the way, and they're paying some crazy amount in tax this year, like 150 million or something. But I think that the rules, the setup, just kind of puts these guys in a position to have a little bit more certainty about things and to force decision-making processes to happen. Also, it's 5 guys on a court, and if you can get 2 or 3 really good ones, you got a shot. We need 40 of them, and so I think that makes a difference too. The big names that are getting extended and getting that are signing. I mean, I think you see it that way, that teams just know they might be a player or 2 away from taking a run at something.
Hello? Anybody else? Are we all good? Mr. Evans, anything? Dan?
Nope, I have nothing. I have nothing to share or ask.
Okay. All right. Well, let's all give a warm thank you to Mr. Rosenthal of the Colorado Rockies, and for his time and insight. So thank you, Zack.
Thank you. Enjoy your holidays, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it.
Take care.
Better days ahead.
Yes, no doubt about it.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul.
All right. You bet.
Bye.
Bye. And I suppose that will wrap up our session, unless anybody else has anything for the good of the group, or any other comments, questions, or concerns. Okay. Well, I want to again thank Alex Marks for his stellar electronic performance, and I'd like to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving. Please stay safe and well. Okay. Okay, everybody. Thanks so much.
You too, Paul.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.